The chandeliers in the grand ballroom of the Halcyon dripped with crystal and glinted like icicles under soft golden light. A live quartet played jazz covers in the corner, while waiters in starched uniforms floated through the crowd with flutes of imported champagne and miniature gold-leafed appetizers. Vanessa Ashcroft spared no expense for her 35th birthday party, an event she declared would be as unforgettable as she is. Nasrin stood near the back of the room, the cool marble floor grounding her. She smoothed her simple navy dress, the only one she owned that passed for formal wear. Daniel, her husband, stood beside her in an unassuming charcoal blazer, sleeves slightly rolled from earlier in the day. His black jeans and scuffed shoes drew a few glances. He didn't care, neither did she. But Vanessa did. Vanessa was radiant in a rose gold gown tailored to perfection, her honey blonde hair swept up in curls that caught the light. She looked every inch the self-made success she claimed to be. Her boutique was the talk of their social circle, even if it had been struggling in silence for months. Nasrin knew that, of course. But she said nothing. Tonight wasn't about rivalry. Or so she thought. A chime rang out. The music faded. All eyes turned to Vanessa, now standing on a small platform near the cake, an ostentatious 5-tiered structure, frosted in pale pink and edible pearls. She raised her glass, flashing a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I just want to thank you all," she purred, her voice dripping with champagne and charm. "To my friends, my colleagues, my loyal boutique clients, and, of course, my family." Her gaze swept across the room like a searchlight. When it landed on Nasrin and Daniel, something changed. A slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. The smile sharpened. "And let's not forget my baby sister Nasrin and her ever-humble husband Daniel," she continued. There was a smattering of laughter, too eager, too forced. "They've always had a certain talent," Vanessa added, pausing for effect, "for showing up. Even if they never bring anything but empty plates and wide eyes." More laughter this time. Louder. Crueler. Nasrin felt her stomach twist. Her cheeks burned, but she didn't flinch. She locked eyes with Vanessa for a moment, long enough to register the flash of victory in her sister's expression. Daniel didn't react. He stood still, his hands folded loosely in front of him, his gaze resting somewhere just beyond the crowd. But Nasrin could feel the tension vibrating through him like a held breath. She reached for his hand. He let her take it, but his grip was firm. Steady. Vanessa tipped back her glass. "To family," she said sweetly, before stepping off the platform to thunderous applause. Nasrin forced a smile. She had expected a jab or two, but this? It was calculated, designed to humiliate. She turned toward Daniel, ready to whisper a soft reassurance, but he was already looking down at his phone. The screen cast a faint glow on his face. A single message blinked up at him. "The boutique deal is closed." Daniel's lips curved into a smile. Not bitter, not angry, just calm, knowing. Nasrin saw it and blinked, confused. He met her gaze at last, and for the first time that evening he spoke. Happy. Long before the glitz and venom of Vanessa's birthday bash, Daniel Kahn had been quietly rewriting the rules of success, alone, behind screens, in the shadows of flashier men. While the world celebrated bombastic tech bros launching vanity apps, Daniel worked tirelessly on something different, a discreet, AI-driven platform that connected under-resourced women with grant funding, legal support, and entrepreneurial mentorship. The idea had started as a passion project during his mother's cancer treatments, when Nasrin's mother, now his mother-in-law, stood by their side like a fortress. It wasn't just about coding, it was personal. For 5 years, Daniel had kept his head down, driven by a quiet rage against systemic inequality and a deep belief in building tools that didn't just generate profit, they restored dignity. Investors initially scoffed. "Not sexy," they said. "Too soft." But when his software caught the attention of a socially minded VC firm in Amsterdam, everything changed. The final acquisition? $85 million, sealed just a week before Vanessa's party. Still, Daniel didn't post about it. No splashy interviews, no car upgrades, no diamond watches. His celebration? A day volunteering at a women's shelter he just purchased and renamed the House of Second Chances, a tribute to the one place his mother always said she'd needed but never found. Nazrin had begged him to at least tell her parents, or Vanessa, just to shut her up. But Daniel, calm and grounded, shook his head. "She already has her version of us," he said. "Let her keep it, for now." Nazrin, fiercely proud and fiercely protective, agreed. Not out of weakness, but strategy. Let the world laugh. The reveal, if it came, would be undeniable. And that time was closer than anyone realized. Across town, Vanessa stood in her boutique's office, a pristine, white lacquered room with gold-accented trim. On the desk, 3 unopened bills and a letter from her bank with final notice, typed in red. Her lipstick smudged on the rim of a wine glass, her laptop open to an empty sales dashboard. She rubbed her temples, fighting back tears. She had gone all in on a risky expansion, betting on a trend that tanked. Her flagship store was bleeding money, and with her pride too inflated to ask for help, especially from Nazrin, she had no lifelines left. Until the call. "Miss Ashcroft?" said a polished voice. "We represent a private investment group interested in purchasing your boutique at full valuation." Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me? We've been watching your brand. There's potential. Terms will be simple. Full buyout. We'd like to close quickly." She hesitated. Something about the anonymity felt odd. "Can I meet the investor?" "I'm afraid they prefer discretion," the voice said, "but the terms are fair. You'll be compensated generously, and your brand will remain intact, for now." Vanessa, cornered and gasping for a win, agreed. She signed the documents within 48 hours, holding her pen like a lifeline. That night she sat alone in the boutique, swirling the last of her wine as twilight settled across the showroom. The mannequins stared back at her like frozen judges. She looked around her once prized kingdom, now no longer hers. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them away. No one will ever know, she told herself. She had no idea that not only did someone know, but that someone had orchestrated it. From across the city, Daniel glanced at his inbox. Transaction confirmed. And the game had quietly begun. Vanessa Ashcroft sauntered into her boutique 2 days after signing the mysterious contract, feeling like a queen returning to her throne. The store still looked the same. Mirrored walls, pristine white floors, and rows of blush-toned fashion that screamed elegant rebellion. But something in the air had shifted. The scent of desperation, once clinging to her like a second skin, had been replaced with something sweeter. Vindication. Her silent investor hadn't just saved her. They'd rescued her at the very moment she was starting to feel invisible, and that was something Vanessa couldn't stand, being invisible. She clicked across the showroom in Louboutins she could barely afford last month, passing employees who still had no idea their paychecks were now courtesy of someone else. Her assistant Camilla buzzed about some strategic rebranding suggestions the investor group had sent over. They said to expect some operational involvement going forward? Camilla chirped. Vanessa bristled. They saved the store, not the vision. My brand doesn't need saving. It just needed backing. Camilla paused, then nodded carefully. Of course, Miss Ashcroft. Vanessa waved her off and retreated into her office, shutting the door and leaning against it. She hated the ambiguity, the powerless feeling of being owned, but the money was real. Her accounts were no longer bleeding. Rent was paid, creditors had gone quiet. For now, she swiveled in her leather chair and pulled out her phone. Vanessa Boutique officially back on track. You should stop by. You'll want to see what success looks like, winking face. She sent it to the one person she knew would be squirming with envy, Nazrin. Across town, Nazrin read the message on her phone and rolled her eyes. "She's already gloating," she muttered. Daniel sat at their small kitchen table, still in his work boots from the shelter site. He sipped coffee, entirely unbothered. "Good, let her. You're sure she hasn't figured out it's you?" "Vanessa?" he smirked. "She thinks everything good in her life is a reward. She'd never imagine she's a charity case, let alone mine." Nazrin shook her head, half impressed. "Still, the way she talks down to people, she'll take credit for every improvement and never once thank her savior." "That's the point," Daniel said. "Let her have her fantasy. She's walking straight into her own undoing." Nazrin bit her lip. A part of her still ached at the thought of hurting her sister, even if Vanessa had humiliated her in front of family, friends, and strangers alike. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. About reminding people like Vanessa that not every power play ends in their favor. Her phone buzzed again. "Vanessa, hosting a celebration next weekend. Private party. Influencer list only. Wear something less humble this time, yeah?" Throwing kisses, Nasrin nearly dropped her phone. "She's inviting us," she said aloud, stunned. Daniel took the phone and read the message. His brow arched slightly. "Sounds like she wants to show off. She doesn't realize what she's parading around is the very thing she no longer owns." Daniel leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Let's RSVP." Later that night, Nazrin stood before her modest wardrobe, flipping through dresses that had seen more job interviews than parties. She hesitated, unsure. Daniel appeared behind her, holding a sleek black garment bag. "Try this," he said. She unzipped it slowly. Inside was a tailored, deep emerald gown, elegant, powerful, unapologetically bold. "Daniel," she whispered, stunned. "Where did you—" "It's time you stopped blending in," he said softly. "She wanted you to look like a freeloader. Let's show her what success actually looks like." Nazrin held the gown to her chest. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't dreading a party. She was ready to walk into the lion's den, not as prey, but as the fire. The victory party Vanessa hosted wasn't just a celebration, it was a performance. Held at a luxury rooftop lounge, overlooking the skyline, everything from the imported orchids on each table to the monogrammed champagne bottles screamed curated extravagance. Golden uplights flickered against cream drapery, while DJs spun ambient house music at just the right volume to allow whispered judgments. Vanessa moved through the crowd like a crowned queen, all smiles and angles, draped in a red satin gown that shimmered as she walked. At her side, the latest accessory, her boyfriend Chase, an influencer whose entire brand revolved around designer sneakers and vague motivational captions. "Smile, babe," Vanessa hissed between her teeth as the photographer caught them mid-toast. Chase flashed a hollow grin, another one for the lifestyle goals folder. The crowd consisted of clients, fashion bloggers, boutique partners, and more importantly, the kinds of people Vanessa had once dreamt of knowing, but now treated as adoring extras in the soap opera of her life. And tonight, she was writing the script. Or so she thought. Meanwhile, in the elevator rising toward the rooftop, Nazrin adjusted the neckline of her emerald green gown, its structured elegance hugging her frame like armor. Her curls were swept up, her makeup subtle but sharp. She looked nothing like the woman who had stood quietly in the back of a ballroom weeks earlier while her sister publicly mocked her. Daniel stood beside her, a vision of effortless cool in a perfectly tailored black suit. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, focused, scanning, betrayed the engineer within, always calculating. "You don't have to say much tonight," he murmured to Nazrin. "She'll do the talking. And the undoing." Nazrin gave a soft, nervous chuckle. "I'm not here for revenge," she said. "I just want her to see us, really see us." The elevator dinged. When the couple stepped onto the rooftop, the effect was immediate. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Even the DJ missed a beat. Vanessa's face twitched when she saw them. Her smile returned a moment too late. "Well, well," she purred, sweeping toward them with a champagne glass in hand. "Look what the wind blew in. And in something fitted, no less." Nasrin smiled coolly. "You did ask me to, quote, dress less humble. I try to follow instructions." Vanessa let out a high-pitched laugh. "Oh, darling, I was joking. But you do clean up unexpectedly well." Daniel extended his hand to Vanessa, polite but firm. "You've thrown quite the party." "Only the best," she replied, clinking her glass with his. "Success should be celebrated. And when you've built something from scratch like I have, well, you know how rare that is." "Oh," Daniel said evenly, "we know." Nasrin scanned the room. "No investor tonight?" Vanessa scoffed. "Still a mystery. Some eccentric silent partner who prefers to work in shadows. But no complaints. They know quality when they see it." Daniel raised a brow. "Interesting. And you don't find that risky?" Vanessa waved him off. "Please, I'm too good a brand to lose." As the night wore on, Nasrin and Daniel mingled politely, sipping their drinks and exchanging niceties with guests who, suddenly, treated them with curiosity rather than pity. No one said it aloud, but the shift was palpable. Nasrin didn't look like a freeloader tonight. Just as Vanessa stood to give her toast, another brag disguised as gratitude. A sharply dressed courier appeared at the edge of the rooftop, scanning the crowd. "Miss Vanessa Ashcroft?" he called. Vanessa, startled, blinked. "Yes?" He stepped forward and handed her a sleek white envelope. Heavy, sealed with a gold insignia. "The investor sent this for you. Strictly time-sensitive." Gasps rippled through the guests. Even Chase leaned in. Vanessa narrowed her eyes at the envelope, uncertainty creeping into her face for the first time that night. Her fingers hovered over the flap. Nasrin watched silently, her heart thudding. Daniel stood beside her, arms calmly folded. This wasn't just a message, it was the beginning of the reveal. The party's chatter fell into a hush, curiosity tightening the air like a noose. All eyes were now on Vanessa, the queen of the hour, standing center stage with the mysterious white envelope in her hands. Her perfectly manicured fingers hovered over the seal, as if it might bite her. She glanced at the courier again, but he was already gone, disappearing into the crowd as swiftly as he'd arrived. Chase leaned in. "Babe, this another branding thing?" Vanessa shot him a look that said, "Don't speak unless you're sure you sound smarter than me." "Everyone, relax," she said with a shaky laugh, raising the envelope as if it were a party favor. "Probably just a little love note from my investor, or maybe they finally want to meet their star player." The crowd chuckled. But Daniel, near the edge of the lounge with Nasrin by his side, watched without smiling. Vanessa slid her fingernail under the seal and cracked it open. Inside, she found a neatly folded legal document, 2 pages thick, crisp, official. She unfolded it with dramatic flair, but as her eyes scanned the first lines, her smile began to falter. Her throat constricted. She blinked once, then again. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The room, sensing something amiss, shifted from curiosity to discomfort. "What is it, Vanessa?" someone called. "Is it good news?" Vanessa finally found her voice. But it wasn't the triumphant purr everyone expected. It was tight, dry, almost inaudible. This is a mistake." Nasrin stepped forward slightly, her heels tapping gently across the floor. "Everything all right, sis?" Vanessa's eyes shot to her, wild and wide. "Did you know about this?" Daniel's voice cut through the silence. Calm, clear, lethal. "She didn't, but I did." Vanessa turned toward him slowly, the blood draining from her face. What is this?" she asked, the pages trembling in her hands. Daniel took a single step forward, eyes locked with hers. "It's the deed to your boutique, signed, notarized, and officially transferred." Gasps echoed. Phones were discreetly raised. The word deed crackled through the crowd like dry leaves catching fire. "No," Vanessa said, her voice rising now. "You're lying. The investor, he..." I am the investor, Daniel said simply. Another wave of stunned silence, then a few shocked murmurs. Vanessa took a step back, bumping into a table and nearly knocking over a vase of white roses. No, you don't have that kind of money. You're... She stammered, eyes flicking to Nasrin. You're nobody's. Nasrin's expression didn't change. But her silence spoke volumes. Daniel walked closer, his voice still gentle, but now it carried weight. You assumed that because I don't flaunt wealth, I don't have any? Because I dress simply, I must be struggling. But the truth is, while you were busy mocking us at your last party, I was closing an acquisition deal worth $85 million. Vanessa stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. I didn't buy your boutique to ruin you, Daniel continued. I bought it to save it, at Nasrin's request. A few people gasped. She didn't want to see you lose everything. Even after how you treated her, that's the kind of woman she is. Vanessa's gaze snapped to Nasrin, searching for a lie, for a trap, for anything to steady the ground beneath her. But Nasrin remained still, her eyes steady. No malice, just truth. Daniel stepped back, turning slightly to the stunned guests. So no, he added. We didn't come empty-handed. He glanced at Vanessa one last time. We came owning the room. The silence following Daniel's declaration hung over the rooftop like a thundercloud, suffocating and electric. Vanessa's fingers slackened, and the deed slipped from her hands like a dead leaf, fluttering to the marble floor. The soft slap of paper against stone might as well have been a gunshot. No one moved to pick it up. Her breathing grew shallow as whispers rippled through the crowd. 85 million? He bought her boutique? Wait, that Daniel? Even Chase, usually glued to her like a decorative handbag, took a quiet step back, his mouth twitching into something between awe and embarrassment. Vanessa blinked rapidly, trying to summon the old version of herself, the woman who commanded rooms, who never broke composure. But her armor was cracking. She wasn't done yet, though. Fine, she said, with a trembling laugh. So you made a flashy purchase. Bravo, that doesn't mean you own me. Daniel raised an eyebrow. I don't need to. And then just as Vanessa tried to catch her breath, Daniel reached into his jacket and retrieved a second envelope, this one slightly thicker. He held it up. I wasn't planning on saying anything else tonight, he said, voice steady, but since the attention's already here. He looked at Nasrin, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. Daniel turned back to the crowd. Earlier, Vanessa thanked everyone for coming to her party, for enjoying her hospitality, but she left out one small detail. He handed the envelope to a nearby guest. Pass this up to her, please. It moved through the hands of a now silent crowd like contraband. Vanessa snatched it up and tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a property deed, complete with signatures, bank stamps, and official seals. Her jaw clenched as she scanned it. No, this is forged. It's real, Daniel interrupted. 2 weeks ago, Nasrin and I purchased this penthouse suite from the owner who'd been trying to sell for months. It was meant to be a surprise for her parents, and tonight's event, every drink, every plate, every flower, was paid for by us. He paused just long enough for everyone to absorb it. So to clarify, you've been hosting a party in our house? A stunned gasp echoed across the rooftop. A few guests instinctively took a step away from Vanessa, as if her humiliation might be contagious. One influencer whispered, "Oh my God," and began typing furiously into her notes app, no doubt planning a viral recap post before dessert. Vanessa's legs buckled slightly, and she reached for a nearby chair to steady herself. Nasrin stepped forward then, her voice soft but cutting. You were so quick to label us freeloaders, Vanessa, to treat Daniel like a nobody and me like an embarrassment, all while standing in a home we bought for your own family. The words landed with surgical precision. Vanessa looked at her sister, searching her face for mockery, but found none. Just quiet disappointment. You could have told me, she said weakly. We tried, Nasrin replied, but you weren't listening. Across the room, a waiter approached Daniel and leaned in discreetly. "Sir?" he whispered. "You've got reporters calling the venue. Someone leaked the boutique deal. They want a statement from the, quote, silent philanthropist tech mogul." Daniel gave a faint smile. "Let them wait." Vanessa clutched the envelope to her chest like a life preserver, her world crumbling around her in real time. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't the one holding the spotlight. She was standing in someone else's house. And they had just evicted her from her own fantasy. 3 days after the rooftop disaster, Vanessa Ashcroft sat alone in her boutique's office, staring at her reflection in the darkened computer screen. Her once immaculate desk was cluttered with half-drunk smoothies, scattered invoices, and a single bottle of under-eye concealer lying capless on its side. She hadn't slept. The silence was oppressive. Not just the literal silence of an empty store, clients had canceled, influencers were ghosting her, but the digital silence. No likes, no tags, no calls. Her phone, once a vibrating hive of attention, had been still for hours. The few texts that did come through were from acquaintances who opened with, "So sorry about the mix-up the other night," before pivoting into silence when she didn't immediately respond with scandalous clarifications. But the real dagger came when her assistant, Camilla, poked her head in that morning. "Just a heads up," she said, awkwardly twisting her phone in her hands. "Jules from Luxe Style Weekly pulled your feature, said there's confusion around brand ownership." Vanessa's voice came out sharp. "My brand," Camilla blinked. "Right, just letting you know." She didn't add that she'd also seen Camilla's LinkedIn profile had been quietly updated, seeking new opportunities. Back at home, what was left of it, Vanessa curled up on the couch with a blanket and a glass of Pinot Noir. Her apartment, once filled with the buzz of curated brunches and photo shoots, felt like a mausoleum. Chase had left a note that morning. "Gonna crash at Wes's for a few days. You need space. This is a lot." Translation: he didn't sign up for this. She should have seen it coming. Chase had never loved her. He loved her access, her sparkle, the invitations she could pull. Now that her name was circling in whispers of liar, front, and overhyped boutique Barbie, the sparkle had dulled. And so had his loyalty. But none of it, none, stung like what she saw that evening. She had been scrolling through Chase's Instagram out of masochism when she noticed something strange. A new post. Him, smiling at a rooftop lounge. Same gold lights. Same skyline view. She paused. The caption read, "Leveling up with Real One's money bag fire." But it wasn't the caption that made her stomach flip. It was the comment underneath, from Nazrin. A single word. Interesting. Vanessa's heart began to pound. She clicked Chase's tagged photos. One showed him mid-laugh with 2 women, both entrepreneurs Nazrin had previously worked with during her nonprofit days. One of them had been in talks with Daniel about funding for a women-led retail incubator. The pieces snapped together like teeth. Nazrin wasn't just watching her fall. She was catching everyone else as they jumped ship. Vanessa's hands trembled as she unlocked Chase's tablet. He never logged out of anything. She opened his messages. There it was. "Nazrin, I hope she didn't hurt you too badly. Some people only know how to take. You deserve better, Chase." "Chase, she doesn't even know what's coming." Vanessa dropped the tablet like it burned. Her mind raced, flickering through every moment from the last month. Every cold stare, every passive-aggressive smile, every silence she'd chalked up to jealousy or insecurity. Was this what it had always been? A long game? No, it couldn't be. Nasrin was sweet, shy. She didn't have it in her, did she? Vanessa stood, dizzy. The boutique, the house, the party, the reporters. Now Chase? She suddenly saw the one pattern she had been too vain, too proud to admit. Everything she once controlled was now in Nasrin's hands. Vanessa stood at the edge of her marble bathroom sink, gripping the porcelain so tightly her knuckles whitened. Steam curled around her like smoke in a war zone, and in the foggy mirror she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Gone was the polished, airbrushed entrepreneur of Instagram fame. In her place, eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights, a mouth twitching with rage and disbelief, and a gut-deep realization that her world hadn't just crumbled. It had been reconstructed without her. She stormed back into her bedroom and flung open her laptop. If Nazrin thought she could play the long game, Vanessa was ready to return the serve, with interest. She opened a hidden folder labeled Swan Files, a digital vault of gossip, screenshots, and offhand remarks she'd collected over the years on friends, competitors, and yes, even family. She hadn't needed it before. She'd ruled with charm and image. But now, she needed leverage. She scrolled through years-old screenshots of Nazrin's ex, whispered family conflicts, and even a blurry image from a college party that Vanessa had always kept, just in case. Vanessa clicked through the files like a detective in a thriller. She wasn't spiraling, she was strategizing. She would strike back. But what she didn't know was that the game she thought she was about to start had already been playing for months. 6 months earlier, in a cozy shared co-working space lit by vintage lamps and bursting with handmade vision boards, Nazrin sat across from a woman named Eloise, an attorney who specialized in discreet equity transfers. "This must feel strange," Eloise said gently, as Nazrin signed the first set of documents. "Strange? Yes," Nazrin said, "but also necessary." She paused before signing the final line. "I love my sister," she said honestly, "but she never saw me as her equal, just someone to laugh at, or pity, and she's built an empire on the backs of people she steps over. I'm not trying to destroy her, I'm trying to restructure the balance." Eloise studied her for a long moment. "And Daniel?" Nazrin smiled softly. "This was his idea, but I made the plan." And what a plan it had been! Nazrin had meticulously tracked the boutique's mounting debts, months before the bank letters became red flag urgent. She'd known Vanessa's pride would keep her from seeking help, especially from her embarrassing little sister. She had predicted the public fallout, and worse, she had anticipated Vanessa's inevitable spiral into attack mode. But she hadn't responded out of cruelty. Every move Nazrin made had been one of quiet defense, not vengeance, correction. Still, when Daniel offered to buy the boutique and keep her name out of it, Nazrin hesitated only for a breath. "She'll never see it coming," she had whispered. "No," Daniel agreed, "but when she finally does, make sure you're wearing something expensive." Now, in the present, Nazrin sat in her own apartment, the first she'd ever furnished without hand-me-downs. It was modest, but stylish. Her phone buzzed. A message from a mutual friend. "Vanessa's asking questions. Says she's taking control of the narrative. Be careful." Nazrin stared at the screen. She sighed. Then she opened her own secret folder, Operation Swan Song. Inside, time-stamped communications, spreadsheets of Vanessa's questionable boutique invoices, and a dossier of everything she had once chosen to overlook. Because if Vanessa really wanted war, Nazrin wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't the girl standing in the shadows. She was the one pulling the curtain open. Back in her apartment, Vanessa lit a single candle and scribbled furiously into a leather notebook. "She wants a war?" She pressed her pen down so hard the tip snapped. "She's got one." Vanessa had always understood image. She knew that if people saw you a certain way, confident, glamorous, untouchable, they would believe it. That belief could open doors, land deals, silence critics. Reputation was currency, and Nazrin, sweet, stammering Nazrin, she'd never played the game. Until now. Vanessa sat cross-legged on her bed in silk pajamas that suddenly felt suffocating. Her laptop glowed like a spotlight in the dark. She had spent 2 days assembling a curated smear campaign, fueled by whispers, screen grabs, and highly selective truths. Nasrin had once dated a man with a criminal record? Post it. Her nonprofit had rejected a grant from a controversial donor? Frame it as virtue signaling. Old college photos showing Nasrin at parties? Crop them, attach suggestive captions, and let the rumors breathe. And the final blow? An anonymous blog post, Behind the Angel Act, the truth about Nasrin Khan and her husband's rise to power. It accused Daniel of manipulating women through charity work for media attention and hinted at unethical donations tied to political favors. All speculation, all unproven, but all perfectly worded to light the fire. She scheduled the post for 7 a.m. By 7:15, it was trending. #charity chameleon, #Nasrin exposed, #boutique scandal. Vanessa watched it unfold like a controlled burn, strategic, surgical, satisfying. But she made one fatal mistake. She underestimated how deeply Nasrin had prepared. By noon, the blog post had reached over 30,000 views, and a few minor gossip outlets had picked it up. Vanessa was already practicing her next move, an apology video that would reframe her as the victim of betrayal. That's when it all began to collapse. First came the message from the Fair Ledger, a respected investigative publication. Ms. Ashcroft, would you like to comment on your boutique's 2023 audit? Inconsistencies? Then came another. Do you deny using business funds to pay for personal travel and influencer sponsorships? And another. We've obtained documents from your former supplier alleging unpaid invoices and product misrepresentation. Please confirm or deny. Vanessa's breath caught. She refreshed the blog post. It was gone. Instead, a new headline was climbing the ranks. Silent Sister No More. Nasrin Khan breaks her silence in scathing interview on industry abuse and family betrayal. Attached was a video, released at 12:01 p.m., featuring Nasrin seated calmly in a studio, dressed simply, her voice clear and unwavering. I've stayed quiet for years, she began, out of love, out of fear, out of loyalty. But silence has become permission. And I can't give that anymore. She spoke not just of Vanessa, but of industry practices, exploitation masked as mentorship, and toxic women tearing down other women under the guise of competition. She never named Vanessa directly, but every story, every truth, pointed in one direction. And worse, Nasrin backed it all with receipts, screenshots, emails, voice memos, financial statements. It wasn't revenge. It was evidence. By evening, a formal statement from Daniel's legal team was circulating. We will not dignify slander with responses, but we stand with truth, transparency, and those brave enough to speak out, regardless of bloodlines. News anchors quoted it. A podcast dissected it. TikTok turned it into a soundbite. And Vanessa? She locked her doors, shut the curtains, tossed her phone across the room when the boutique's board emailed to say they were freezing her access pending, quote, urgent internal review. The empire she'd flaunted for years, built on borrowed confidence and photo filters, was turning to ash in her perfectly manicured hands. She curled up in bed, arms around her knees, and whispered the one name she once dismissed. Nasrin. But the girl who once swallowed her pride? She'd already learned how to spit fire. The boutique once known as Ashcroft Atelier now bore a new name, carved in elegant brass across the glass doors, the Rise Collective. Inside, natural light spilled across a redesigned open floor plan. Instead of couture mannequins and overpriced handbags, the space now housed co-working tables, sample product displays, and a glass-walled mentorship lounge. Women, some young, some older, all sharply focused, filled the rooms with purpose. Nasrin walked through the center of it all, clipboard in hand, confidence radiating from her posture. This was her vision. a women's accelerator where entrepreneurs could learn, collaborate, and launch their own ventures without being judged by their wardrobe or last name. The boutique's bones had remained, but everything about the soul had changed, and yet the past hadn't disappeared. It lingered, quietly, in a framed quote near the entrance. Success isn't about who notices when you arrive. It's about who stands when the crowd walks away. Daniel stepped out of his office as Nazrin passed. "Press wants a few minutes before the ribbon cutting," he said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "You ready?" She smiled, eyes soft but steady. "I was born ready. I just forgot for a while." The launch event was understated but well attended. Journalists, former critics, and even a few humbled influencers came to witness the transformation of what had once been a monument to vanity into a sanctuary for second chances. At the back of the crowd, in oversized sunglasses and a faded trench coat, stood a figure no one expected or noticed. Vanessa. She had lost almost everything: the boutique, her board seat, her brand partnerships, even her apartment, which she had quietly sublet while staying with a distant cousin in the suburbs. Her name was no longer whispered with envy, but with caution. The fall had been public and brutal, and for a woman who'd once been addicted to perception, it was a kind of death. But she hadn't come to gloat. She came because, for once, she wanted to see what it felt like to watch someone rise without stepping on anyone to do it. She watched as Nazrin took the stage, thanking her team, crediting her mentors, and speaking with a poise Vanessa had never seen in her baby sister. She didn't just look powerful, she was. A small part of Vanessa ached, not from jealousy. She was too hollow for that now, but from recognition. She had never known Nazrin at all. After the event, long after the crowd had cleared and the ribbon had been cut, Nazrin stayed behind to walk the showroom one more time. She was adjusting a vase when she heard the soft jingle of the front doorbell. She turned and froze. Vanessa stood in the doorway, dressed in neutrals, face clean of makeup, eyes uncertain. Nazrin took a cautious step forward. "You're here." Vanessa nodded once, swallowing. "I figured the least I could do is say, 'Congrats, it's beautiful.'" Nazrin didn't respond. Vanessa reached into her bag and pulled out a crisp white folder. She placed it on the table between them. Nazrin stared at it. "What is it?" Vanessa exhaled. "My resume." Silence. "I know I don't deserve anything, but I built something once, even if it was shallow. I learned how to source, how to market, how to pitch. I can help, from the bottom, even if it's just answering phones." Nazrin stared at her. In this quiet, humbled woman, she no longer saw the villain who once laughed at her pain. She saw what was left, and in that, she saw something new. Possibility? After a long beat, Nazrin slid the folder closer. "I'll let the program director know you applied." Vanessa's eyes shimmered with something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. As she turned to leave, Nazrin called out softly, "Interns don't get Louboutins, by the way." Vanessa paused, cracked a faint smile, and said, "Then I guess I'll wear flats." Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the new sign overhead. The Rise Collective. Indeed it was.